Bread in circuses. The phrase is used to describe the generation or creation of public approval, not through exemplary or excellent public service or public policy, but through diversion, distraction, or the mere satisfaction of the immediate shallow requirements of the populace. This phrase was used by a Roman writer to deplore the declining heroism of the Romans after the Roman Republic ceased to exist and the Roman Empire began. Two things only the people anxiously desire: bread and circuses. The government kept the Roman populace happy by distributing free food and staging huge spectacles. During the reign of Claudius, there were 159 official holidays on the Roman calendar, a reality that's not conducive for productivity. Idle time and poverty are two ingredients that fuel crime. As a result, the emperors sought ways to keep the masses entertained. They turned increasingly to sport. Roman leaders used sport activities to train soldiers and provide the masses with entertainment spectacles. For the Romans, sports became a show, a dramatic event staged for the purpose of diversion. Rome's citizens had become lazy. They had transformed into a nation of spectators, more content with watching other people play sports and athletics than performing such activities themselves. It could be argued that the United States has become a nation of spectators, much like in ancient Rome. Another thing that I found interesting, on the next page it says, during a halftime or a lunch break, executions would be performed against those convicted of capital offenses. Burning at the stake or crucifixion was a common method of execution. These also served to entertain the Roman spectators. The creation of American football. On November 6th, 1869, Rutgers and Princeton played what was billed as the first college football game. However, it wasn't until the 1880s that a great rugby player from Yale, Walter Camp, pioneered rules changes that slowly transformed rugby into the new game of American football. Walter was a skull and bones. If you do a quick search on him, you'll find a few other names of people that helped create American football. Those names are Amos Alonzo Stagg, Pop Warner, and Fielding Yost, all of which either belong to Skull and Bones or Freemasons. According to another video on YouTube, link is in the description, after the NFL was created in 1922, most, if not all of the earliest franchises had strong ties to the horse race industry and gambling. That seems nothing less than common sense. I would love a smoking gun, but seriously, rich people trying to get richer? Common sense. I did find that Burt Bell was a Phi Kappa Sigma, which is another Skull and Bones type fraternity.
About 100 years ago, this big organization with many branches, they wanted to rule the world basically using Britain as a nucleus of a system, an embryo, which also was going to be joined with the US under the Anglo-American establishment, wrote about the kind of culture and the changes of culture over a 100-year period that they would actually design, implement and bring in. And H.G. Wells talked about it too. He talked about arenas. He says arenas could be put up across the world for sports, for instance. Now at that time, sports was something that children, school children were into. Adults became adults and got onto adult things. So it was unimaginable at the time that people could actually believe that there was even a need for adult sports and entertainment, never mind having arenas built across the world. But he said we can do this and foist basically a sports culture for the males. Using a tribal system, we're all tribal to an extent, that's why we even bother to vote for a tribal leader. This is well understood, that's why we're supplied with these leaders. And because the average man was to become more disengaged from his own destiny as the expert class arose, it was decided that the males would get their outlet basically, gradually becoming helpless as males through sports. Therefore they'd have a tribal team they could identify with, they could cheer them on as though they were winning. In their own personal lives, they were getting nowhere. They were getting disenfranchised in a sense as experts took over decision making for them in all kinds of fields. So this was psychology at use, planned before they even implemented the sports. When radio came along, of course, they used that to the maximum. Sports for the men, soaps basically for the women. And then in came television, as I say, with its alpha state, its hypnotic state. And sure enough, around the 1960s, really, 50s and 60s, it took off. It really, really took off. And men became glued on Saturday nights to the sports shows. A culture industry, which is called by its own the culture industry. The Soviet Union had a department called the culture industry. Their actors and directors were called the cultural leaders, because they would, like a computer, people are like computers, all you have to do is keep giving them new updates every so often, and you can change an entire country or a nation or a block of nations who are all getting the same upgrades at the same time.
A game for tribal males. I've noticed my whole life that fans of opposing teams are willing to brutalize each other for no reason. I say no reason, but they would say, "Don't talk shit about my team," or "My team is losing so I'm mad and I want to fight." Like I said, no reason. The team is not theirs, and the team doesn't give one shit about them. Here's some guys bad-mouthing the opposing team at a game. The following year, one of the players went on to play for the Raiders. It's just an easy job and some money to those guys. And it's actual feelings to you, to everybody else. It's sad. Grown people all over the world act like this.